I still remember that evening like it was yesterday, the night everything began to crumble, though I didn't realize it at the time. My name is Laura Bennett. I'm 52 years old, a mother, a wife, and until recently, I thought I had a happy, stable family. My husband, Tom, and I had been married for nearly 30 years. We built a life together, raised our only son, Ethan, in our cozy home in Charleston, South Carolina. That evening was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life. Ethan was bringing his fiancée, Samantha, over for dinner, the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. I'd seen pictures of her before, of course. A stunning young woman with long honey blonde hair, ocean blue eyes, and a smile that seemed to glow through the screen. But pictures can't prepare you for the real thing. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on my apron and called out, "Tom, can you get that?" He didn't respond. He was probably still in the garage, tinkering with that old boat engine he swore he'd fix one day. So, I went to the door myself. And there she was. Samantha looked like she'd stepped right out of a magazine, classy, confident, beautiful. She extended her hand and said softly, "You must be Mrs. Bennett. It's so nice to finally meet you." Her voice was calm, polished, too polished. I don't know why, but there was something in her tone that made my stomach tighten. Maybe it was nerves. Or maybe it was intuition whispering that something wasn't quite right. "Please, call me Laura," I said, smiling through my unease. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." Ethan stepped in behind her, grinning ear to ear. "Mom, isn't she amazing?" he said, wrapping an arm around Samantha's shoulders. "She's lovely," I replied. And I meant it. She was lovely. Almost too lovely. We sat down to dinner, the four of us, Tom finally joining us after washing up. He looked his usual self, ruggedly handsome, a little grayer, a little thicker around the middle, but still the same man I fell in love with all those years ago. The conversation flowed easily, and I watched my son's eyes light up every time Samantha spoke. She told us about her work at a marketing firm, how she and Ethan met at a coffee shop, and how she had no family nearby, just a few friends in town. Tom, however, was unusually talkative. Normally he was quiet during dinners, especially when meeting new people, but that night, he asked Samantha question after question. "What kind of car do you drive? You said you're from Atlanta. What brought you here? Do you like fishing?" At first, I thought it was sweet that he was taking an interest. But after a while, it felt excessive. He laughed too easily at her jokes, smiled a little too long when their eyes met. Still, I brushed it off. I told myself I was imagining things. Halfway through dessert, Samantha excused herself to the restroom. Tom followed soon after, saying he needed to check the garage door. It wasn't until later that night, when I was clearing the dishes, that I noticed something strange. A faint smell of Samantha's perfume, sweet and floral, lingered near the back hallway that led to the garage. It was strong, fresh. Too fresh to have been left hours ago. I shook it off. Surely, I was overthinking. Later, in bed, I asked Tom what he thought of her. He hesitated. "She's something," he said finally. "Something?" I laughed softly. "Good something or bad something?" He smiled, looking away. "Good, I guess. She's got a spark. Reminds me of someone I used to know." I frowned. "Who?" He looked at me then, a little too long. "You," he said, but his tone felt empty, like it was just the right word to say, not the truth. I rolled over and stared at the wall, trying to convince myself that my mind was playing tricks. I trusted my husband. I loved him. And yet, something deep inside me whispered, "Watch closely." That whisper wouldn't stop. The next few weeks, Samantha started visiting more often, sometimes to see Ethan, sometimes to help me plan the engagement party. She was charming, polite, and eager to please. She'd sit in the kitchen, sipping coffee while I cooked, asking questions about my recipes or marriage advice. But there were moments, fleeting, strange moments, when I caught Tom watching her with a look I hadn't seen in years. Once, I walked into the living room to find them laughing together. Tom's hand was on her shoulder. They both froze when they saw me. "Oh, Laura," Samantha said, jumping up. "Tom was just telling me about the time you both got lost on that camping trip." I forced a smile, my heart pounding. "Oh, that old story," I said. After she left, I asked Tom about it. He waved it off, saying I was being paranoid. "She's practically family now, Laura. Don't be weird about it. Don't be weird about it." The words stung. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing their laughter replaying in my head. It wasn't just laughter. It was something else, something too intimate. And that was the night I decided I had to know the truth. The next few days felt off. You know that strange feeling when something in your life shifts, but you can't quite pinpoint what it is? That was me. Every smile from Tom felt forced. Every time Samantha came over, I caught subtle glances between the two of them that sent a chill up my spine. It wasn't jealousy. It was intuition. A woman's sixth sense that something sacred was being threatened. One Thursday afternoon, Samantha texted me, saying she wanted to come over early to help plan the engagement party menu. I agreed, trying to act normal. But halfway through chopping vegetables, she got a call. I heard her say, "Oh hi, yeah, I can sneak out for a bit. 10 minutes. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and then she turned her back to me, walking out into the backyard. When she came back in, her cheeks were flushed, her smile too bright. "Sorry, that was just Ethan," she said. But something in her tone made my heart twist. That evening, Ethan called to say he'd be working late. I was sitting in the living room reading when Tom came downstairs, freshly showered, dressed better than usual. His shirt was crisp, and he'd used the good cologne, the one he only wore for date nights or special occasions. "Going somewhere?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just grabbing a beer with Mark," he said. Mark was his coworker. The one who'd moved to Florida 6 months ago. "Oh," I said softly, pretending not to notice the lie. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and left. I sat there for a moment, frozen. The silence in the house felt deafening. Then, without fully thinking, I grabbed my purse and keys and followed him. I wasn't proud of it. I'd never followed my husband before. But my instincts screamed louder than my conscience. His truck led me through town, then down toward the waterfront, an area known for its small restaurants and quiet motels. My heart hammered so hard I could barely breathe. When he pulled into a small inn near the edge of the pier, my stomach dropped. I parked 2 cars behind him, my hands trembling as I watched. He got out. Then, just seconds later, a silver car pulled in beside him. It was Samantha, my son's fiancée. She stepped out wearing a beige coat and heels, her hair tied up. Tom walked toward her, looked around, then placed his hand on her arm. She smiled. And then, right there under the dim glow of a street lamp, he kissed her. I froze. I couldn't breathe. My throat tightened so hard I thought I'd choke. My husband, my partner of 30 years, was having an affair with the woman my son was going to marry. I sat there for what felt like hours, tears streaming down my face, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Every memory of our marriage flashed through my mind, birthdays, anniversaries, quiet nights on the porch, all shattered in an instant. When they disappeared into one of the motel rooms, I knew I couldn't sit there any longer. I drove away before I did something irrational. My chest burned, my vision blurred. I pulled over by the pier and just cried. The kind of cry that doesn't make a sound, just silent shaking and pain that comes from somewhere deep inside your bones. By the time I got home, it was after midnight. Tom wasn't there yet. I sat on the couch, staring at the wedding photo on the wall, us in our 20s, smiling, full of dreams. I wondered when he stopped looking at me that way. When he finally came home, he smelled faintly of perfume. Not mine. Hers. He smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey, you're up late," he said casually, hanging up his coat. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Did you have fun with Mark?" He froze for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, it was good to catch up." I looked him in the eyes, forcing a smile. "That's nice." He didn't notice the tremor in my voice. When he went upstairs to shower, I sat there, staring blankly at the wall. Every beat of my heart whispered the same word, betrayal. The next morning, I told myself I'd confront him. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. If I accused him without it, he'd deny it. Gaslight me. Make me feel crazy. So I waited. I watched. Samantha kept visiting. But now, I noticed small things. How her perfume lingered in the hallway after she'd gone to the bathroom. How Tom suddenly started shaving more often. How Samantha blushed when Tom made even the smallest joke. One afternoon, I caught them in the kitchen alone. Samantha was laughing at something Tom said, her hand resting briefly on his arm. When I walked in, they both jumped apart. Everything okay? I asked, forcing a smile. Oh, yes, Samantha said quickly. Tom was just helping me find the coffee filters. There was something about the way she said Tom. So casual. Too familiar. That night, I went through Tom's phone while he was asleep. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. At first, there was nothing unusual, just texts about bills, work, sports. But then, I saw a message under a contact name I didn't recognize, Sandy M. It was her. Samantha. The messages were subtle, coded. Same place tomorrow? Can't wait to see you again. Wish things were simpler. And his replies, always worth the risk. You make me feel alive again. That was the line that broke me. You make me feel alive again. I couldn't sleep after that. The bed felt like ice beside me. Every sound in the house made my heart ache. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet. Not until I had everything, the truth, the proof, the full story. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my son. About the future he was walking blindly into. And if they thought they could betray both of us and get away with it, they were wrong. I barely recognized myself in the mirror that morning. My face looked pale, eyes swollen from crying, hair tangled from a sleepless night. I stared at my reflection for a long time, at the woman who had loved, trusted, and built a family only to be betrayed by the two people she least expected. For a moment, I thought about pretending I didn't know. About letting things be. But how could I? How could I look at my son, my only child, knowing the woman he wanted to marry was sleeping with his father? No. I had to stop this. But I had to be smart. I started documenting everything. I took photos of the texts from Tom's phone, screenshot the contact name Sandy M, and sent them to my email. I even took a photo of the perfume bottle Samantha had left in our guest bathroom, something she conveniently forgot. Every detail mattered. That week, I followed them again. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. They were careful, but not careful enough. The same motel. The same lies. Once, I even saw Samantha leaving our house alone while Tom was supposedly running errands. My chest ached so much it was hard to breathe. By Friday, I had what I needed. The only thing left was to decide what to do with it. That night, Ethan came home, his face glowing with happiness. Mom, he said, grinning ear to ear, I was thinking of moving the wedding up. Maybe a summer date instead of fall. His words hit me like a brick. Summer was just 3 months away. I forced a smile. That's wonderful, honey. But what's the rush? He shrugged. Why wait, right? When you know, you know. My stomach turned. He had no idea that the woman he loved was already sleeping with his father. I wanted to scream, too. Tell him everything right there. But I couldn't, not yet. I needed to control how this truth came out, because once it did, our family would never be the same again. After Ethan went upstairs, I called my sister, Maggie. She was the only person I trusted enough to tell. Maggie, I said, trying to steady my voice, something's happening. Something bad. Her tone immediately changed. Laura, what's wrong? I hesitated, then said it out loud for the first time. Tom's having an affair with Ethan's fiancée. The silence on the other end lasted several seconds before I heard her gasp. Oh my God. Laura, are you sure? I've seen them, I whispered. I followed them. I have proof. She exhaled sharply. That's unbelievable. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said. But I can't let Ethan marry her. And I can't let Tom lie to him another day. Maggie paused, then said softly, "Laura, whatever you do, make sure you protect yourself too. When men cheat like that, they'll do anything to keep it hidden." She was right. Tom wasn't the kind of man who'd react calmly to confrontation. He could charm, manipulate, twist things around until I was the one apologizing. I had seen him do it before, to colleagues, to neighbors. But this time, I'd be ready. The next day, I set up a small hidden camera in the living room. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, but deep down, I knew what I was hoping for: to catch them. To have undeniable proof. And then, like fate itself wanted me to find out, it happened. That afternoon, I told Tom I was heading out to meet Maggie for lunch. I left my car parked around the corner and walked back quietly through the side yard, hiding behind the fence. The camera was already rolling inside. About an hour later, Samantha's silver car pulled up. I watched her walk up to the door, look around nervously, and let herself in with the spare key we kept under the mat. My stomach dropped. She knew where it was. A few minutes later, Tom appeared in the living room. They didn't waste time. He pulled her close, kissed her like a man who had no wife, no guilt, no soul. I wanted to burst through that door, to scream, to throw everything I had at them. But I stayed still, recording every second through the app on my phone, tears blurring my vision. When she finally left, I walked back in through the front door like nothing happened. My heart was pounding, but I felt cold, numb, even. Tom looked up, startled. "Hey, I thought you were out with your sister?" I forced a smile. I was. But I forgot my wallet. He chuckled, the kind of casual, careless laugh that burned me to my core. "You're always forgetting something, Laura." I nodded. "Yeah. But not for long." That night, I sat in bed and rewatched the footage. I could barely recognize my husband in that video. The way he touched her, whispered to her, looked at her like she was his whole world, it shattered me. But what shattered me even more was what he said right before she left. "I'll talk to her soon," he murmured. "She's been distant anyway. Once the wedding's called off, we can figure things out." The wedding's called off. My hands trembled. He was planning to end our marriage for her, for the woman who was supposed to marry our son. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let him destroy Ethan's heart. I wasn't going to let him humiliate me, or walk away with her like he was the victim. The next morning, I made a plan. I invited both Ethan and Samantha over for Sunday dinner. I told Tom too, pretending everything was normal. But what I didn't tell any of them was that I was going to play that footage on the living room TV. Right in front of them. Sunday came faster than I wanted it to. The entire morning, my stomach twisted in knots. Every time I thought about what I was about to do, my hands would shake, but then I'd picture my son's face, his happiness, his love for Samantha, and it gave me strength. Tom noticed I was quieter than usual. "You okay?" he asked over coffee. "I'm fine," I said softly. "Just a little nervous about dinner. You know how much I want tonight to go well." He smiled, completely unaware that tonight would be the end of everything he'd built on lies. By 6 o'clock, the house smelled like roast chicken and rosemary. The table was set perfectly, candles flickering, music playing softly in the background. You'd never guess that beneath that calm exterior, a storm was about to break. Ethan arrived first, cheerful and talkative as ever. "Mom, something smells amazing," he said, kissing my cheek. Then Samantha walked in. Her perfume hit me instantly, sweet and floral, the same scent I'd smelled the night I first suspected her. She looked stunning in a pale blue dress, hair in soft curls, smile wide and warm. But to me, every bit of that smile felt fake. Tom walked over, greeting her with that same charm that once made me fall in love with him. My chest tightened as I watched her eyes flicker toward him, quick, subtle, but undeniable. "All right," I said, taking a deep breath. "Everyone, let's sit down." Dinner started smoothly enough. Ethan talked about work, about how excited he was to start wedding planning. I could barely look at him without my heart breaking. Tom poured everyone wine, including Samantha, who laughed a little too hard at his jokes. I kept my tone calm, my hands steady, even as my mind screamed. About halfway through, I stood up from the table. I actually have something special I want to show you all, I said. A surprise. Tom frowned slightly. A surprise? Yes, I said. Something meaningful. I walked over to the TV and turned it on. The screen flickered, and then I pressed play. At first, there was silence. Then came the video feed from our living room camera. The image was clear. Tom and Samantha. Together. Kissing. His hands on her waist. Her whispering something in his ear. For a moment, no one moved. Ethan's fork dropped onto his plate with a loud clatter. Samantha's face went white as a sheet. Tom's expression twisted, shock, then anger, then pure panic. What the hell is this? Tom snapped, standing up. I turned slowly toward him, my voice trembling but steady. That's you, Tom. And her. In our house. Samantha gasped, tears welling in her eyes. Laura, this isn't what it looks like, don't, I said sharply, my voice cutting through her words. Don't you dare lie to me now. Ethan stood, his face pale. Mom, what is this? Tell me this isn't real. I turned to him, tears filling my eyes. I'm sorry, honey. I wish to God it wasn't. But it's real. I saw them. I recorded it. They've been meeting behind your back for weeks. Tom slammed his hand on the table. You went through my phone. You put cameras in our house. You violated my privacy. I stared at him in disbelief. Your privacy? After what you've done? After betraying your son? Betraying me? Samantha stood up, shaking. Ethan, please, I can explain, but Ethan stepped back, his face a mix of shock and disgust. Explain what? That you were sleeping with my father? Tears streamed down her face. It wasn't supposed to happen. He told me he and your mom were separating. Separating? I said, my voice breaking. We weren't separating, Samantha. That's what he told you so you wouldn't feel guilty. Tom glared at me. Laura, stop. You're twisting everything. You've been distant for years, and you know it. You shut me out, don't you dare, I snapped. Don't you dare. Blame me for your choices. You had a family who loved you. You had a son who looked up to you. And you threw it away for a girl half your age. Ethan turned to Tom, voice trembling. Dad, how could you? Tom's shoulders slumped. For the first time, I saw something break in him, a flash of shame. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said softly. It just did. Samantha sobbed. Ethan, please, I swear I love you, I just got confused. Ethan said, his voice shaking with rage. You got confused into sleeping with my dad. Into lying to me every day. He looked at her with eyes that had turned cold. We're done. Whatever this was, it's over. He grabbed his keys and stormed out the front door, slamming it so hard the whole house shook. Samantha tried to run after him, but I stepped in her way. You've done enough, I said quietly. Leave. She hesitated, her eyes red, her lip trembling. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she whispered before running out into the night. Tom stood there, silent, the weight of what he'd done settling on him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I said, You broke him, Tom. You broke your own son. He looked at me, tears forming in his eyes. Laura, please don't, I said, stepping back. Don't touch me. Don't speak to me. Just pack your things and go. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down, defeated, and walked upstairs without another word. When the door finally closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, every ounce of strength leaving my body. The silence that filled the house was suffocating. I could still hear Ethan's voice echoing in my mind, that raw heartbreak that only a mother can feel through her child. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the flickering light of the TV screen, the same screen that had exposed the truth. My life, my marriage, my family, everything had changed in less than an hour. And even though I felt shattered, I also felt free. Because for the first time, there were no more lies. No more pretending. Just truth, raw, painful, but necessary. Still, I couldn't stop wondering, what would happen now? Ethan wasn't answering his phone. Tom was gone. And Samantha, well, I doubted she'd show her face again. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The damage was done, but healing, that was going to take time. And I wasn't sure if any of us would survive it. The house felt hollow after that night, like all the warmth had been sucked out of it. The faint smell of roasted chicken still lingered, but the laughter, the life, the love, it was gone. What was left behind were echoes of everything that had been broken. I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the couch until sunrise, staring at the empty space where my family once belonged. Every creak of the house reminded me of Ethan's voice, of Samantha's tears, of Tom's pleading eyes. When the morning light crept through the blinds, I realized I was shaking. Not from cold, but from everything I'd been holding in for weeks: anger, heartbreak, disbelief. Tom's car was gone. He'd left sometime during the night. A part of me was relieved. Another part of me hated that he didn't even try to stay and face what he'd done. Around 9, my phone buzzed. It was Maggie. "Laura, I just saw Ethan's post," she said immediately. "Are you okay?" My chest tightened. "What post?" She hesitated. He didn't say much. Just a picture of the beach and the caption, "When everything you believed in turns out to be a lie, you start over." Tears filled my eyes again. "Oh, Maggie, he's hurting," she said gently. "But you did the right thing. You couldn't let him marry her." I nodded silently, even though my heart felt heavy with guilt. Right thing or not, it still destroyed him. The next few days were a blur. Ethan didn't answer my calls or texts. Samantha disappeared completely, her phone went straight to voicemail, her social media accounts wiped clean. And Tom, well, Tom sent one text. "I'll give you space. I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt anyone." I didn't reply. What was there to say? Words couldn't fix betrayal that deep. I spent my time cleaning the house, not because it needed it, but because I needed to do something, anything to distract myself. Every corner of that house held memories of him. The porch swing he built. The photographs from family trips. The worn spot on the couch where he always sat a day. At one point, I found an old photo of the three of us, Ethan's high school graduation. Tom's arm around my shoulder, Ethan smiling wide in his cap and gown. We looked so proud. So whole. I sank to the floor clutching that photo and sobbed. It was the kind of grief you can't explain to anyone. It wasn't just losing a husband. It was losing the idea of the man you thought he was. A few days later, Ethan finally showed up. I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard the front door open. I froze. Then, I saw him standing there, eyes red, face pale, looking older somehow. "Ethan," I whispered, setting down the cup. He didn't speak right away. He just stood there, staring at me, then walked over and hugged me. Hard. I broke down instantly, wrapping my arms around him. "I'm so sorry, baby. I never wanted you to find out like that." He shook his head. "No, Mom. You did what you had to do. He took a deep breath. "I still can't believe it. My own dad." Ha. We sat at the table, sipping tea that neither of us really drank. He told me he'd driven to the coast after leaving that night. Just to clear his head. "I kept thinking maybe there was some mistake," he said. "That maybe it wasn't what it looked like." But then I remembered how many times she cancelled plans, how distracted she'd been lately. It all makes sense now. I reached across the table, taking his hand. "You didn't deserve this, Ethan." He gave a bitter laugh. "Neither did you." We sat there in silence for a while. Finally, he said, "Are you going to divorce him?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I looked down at my hands. "Yes," I said quietly. "There's nothing left to save." Ethan nodded slowly. "Good." That night, after he left, I started packing Tom's things into boxes. His clothes, his fishing gear, the framed photo of our wedding that had hung on the dresser for years. Every item felt like a piece of my past being folded up and sealed away. As I packed, I found one of his old notebooks, the kind he used to jot down ideas for home projects. But this one had something else. Letters. Handwritten letters, tucked between the pages. Most were unfinished, but one caught my eye. It was addressed to me. "Laura, I know I don't say this enough, but I still love you. I've made mistakes, more than I can count, but I can't stop thinking about the man I used to be when you first met me. You saw something in me back then. Lately, I don't even see it myself. I don't know why I did what I did. I think part of me was afraid of getting old, of being invisible. Samantha made me feel wanted again. But I realize now it wasn't her I wanted. It was that feeling. The one you gave me for 30 years. If you ever read this, I'm sorry. Truly. For everything. I sat there for a long time, staring at the paper. I didn't know if it was guilt, remorse, or just a pathetic attempt to ease his conscience, but for a brief moment, I saw the man I used to know. The man I'd fallen in love with. But then I remembered the video. The lies. The nights he chose her over us. And I folded the letter quietly and placed it back in the box. Some mistakes can't be undone. That weekend, Ethan and I met again. He'd decided to move out of the city for a while, spend some time with friends out west, maybe travel. I encouraged it. He needed distance. We both did. Before he left, he hugged me again and said, "We'll be okay, Mom. Eventually." I smiled through tears. "I know, honey. We will." After he drove away, I stood on the porch, watching his car disappear down the road. The house was quiet again, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. Because sometimes, peace doesn't come from holding on, it comes from finally letting go. And though I didn't know what the future held, I knew one thing for sure: I'd survived the worst night of my life. And now, I was ready to start living again. The first morning I woke up without Tom's name on my mind felt strange, liberating, but hollow. For 30 years, my day began with the same rhythm: his footsteps in the hallway, the scent of coffee brewing, the quiet hum of a life built together. Now, silence filled that space. Not the painful kind anymore, but the kind that meant something had finally ended. The divorce papers were filed, and the weight of that decision sat quietly on my kitchen table, like a chapter already read. I didn't cry when I signed them. I thought I would, but instead, I felt something unexpected: peace. In the weeks that followed, I tried to rebuild routines. I joined a local community center's art class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I started walking in the mornings, breathing in the crisp air, feeling my chest open again. The world hadn't stopped spinning, even though mine had cracked apart. Every now and then, though, I'd catch my reflection and wonder who I was now. A divorced woman? A mother trying to heal her son? A woman learning to stand on her own again? I was all of those. And more. One afternoon, as I was painting in class, a man named Robert struck up a conversation. He was kind, soft-spoken, with grey hair and the kind of eyes that made you feel like you could exhale. "Your work has a lot of emotion," he said, nodding toward my canvas. I smiled. "I guess I've had a lot of it lately." He chuckled softly. "Haven't we all?" We talked for hours that day, not about love or loss, but about small things. Music, books, life. It felt easy. Effortless. For the first time in months, I laughed without guilt. That night, I told Ethan about it over the phone. He teased me. "So, Mom's got a new friend, huh?" I rolled my eyes, though he couldn't see me. "He's just a classmate. Don't start planning my wedding." He laughed. "I'm just glad you're smiling again." That meant everything to me. Still, every once in a while, a ghost from the past would knock on the door of my mind. Tom hadn't tried to contact me since the letter, but I knew I'd have to face him one last time when the divorce finalized. That day came sooner than I expected. The courthouse was quiet, its grey walls echoing the sound of footsteps and the low murmur of lawyers and clerks. I spotted him before he saw me. He looked older, tired. His shoulders slumped, eyes distant. When he turned and saw me, his lips parted slightly. "Laura." "Tom." We sat across from each other in the mediation room, papers spread before us. The air was heavy with things unsaid. He cleared his throat. "You look good." I met his eyes. "You don't have to say that." He sighed. "I just wanted you to know. I'm not with her. Not anymore." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Does that make it better?" He lowered his gaze. "No. Nothing does. But I needed you to know it wasn't love. It was a mistake, one I'll regret for the rest of my life. I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him how he shattered everything. But the larger part of me, the part that had found calm, knew screaming wouldn't heal anything. Instead, I said quietly, "You made your choices, Tom. And so did I." He nodded slowly. "I just hope someday you can forgive me." I looked at him for a long moment. Forgiveness isn't something I can give you yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm learning to let go, and that's close enough. When it was all over, he extended his hand. For a moment, I hesitated, but then I shook it. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. As I walked out of that courthouse, sunlight hit my face. I tilted my head back and let it warm my skin. It felt like freedom. That evening, I went to the beach, the same place Ethan had gone weeks earlier when everything fell apart. The ocean stretched wide before me, endless and calm. I took off my shoes and stepped into the cool water. The waves touched my feet like whispers. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive. Not broken. Not angry. Just alive. I whispered to the horizon, "I'm okay now." And I meant it. In the days that followed, life slowly filled in the spaces Tom left behind. I started painting more, even displayed my first piece at a local gallery. It was called The Breaking Point. It showed a woman standing in the middle of a storm, her reflection split but her eyes fierce and unyielding. People said it was powerful. To me, it was just truth on canvas. A month later, Ethan came home for a visit. He looked lighter too. He'd started a new job, was dating someone new, someone kind, genuine. When I met her, I could see hope in his eyes again. That night, we had dinner on the porch, just the two of us, the sunset painting the sky in orange and gold. "You did good, Mom," he said softly. I smiled. "So did you." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever miss him?" I looked out at the fading light. "Sometimes. But not the way you think. I miss the man I thought he was. Not the one he became." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah. I get that." We sat there for a long time, the sound of crickets filling the air. There was no bitterness left, just quiet understanding. As the stars came out, I realized something profound: life doesn't end when love breaks. It just begins again in a different shape. You rebuild. You rediscover. You learn to love yourself enough to never settle for less again. And that's exactly what I was doing. It had been nearly 3 months since the divorce finalized, and life had taken on a gentle, predictable rhythm again. I'd grown fond of my morning walks, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, and the way sunlight now seemed to slip easily into my home, like the world itself was reminding me that I was still here. Ethan called often, checking in, making sure I wasn't lonely. I always teased him for worrying too much, though deep down, his care warmed me more than I admitted. He was healing, too. His laughter sounded genuine again. One Saturday morning, I was returning from the farmer's market, arms full of flowers and fruit, when I saw an envelope sticking out from my front door. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. My heart froze. Tom's. For a long moment, I just stood there staring at it, the breeze catching the corner of the paper. I didn't want to open it. Not after all the pain, the sleepless nights, the tears I'd buried under calm smiles. But curiosity has a cruel way of pulling you toward the very thing you want to avoid. I set the bags on the table, sat down, and tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, slightly wrinkled, as if he'd folded and unfolded it 100 times. "Laura, if you're reading this, I guess I still owe you the truth. I didn't come back to stir up pain, I came because I needed to see you one last time. But I couldn't bring myself to knock on your door. I've been diagnosed with something. It's not good. The doctors say I have maybe a few months, maybe less. I didn't want to burden Ethan or you, not after everything I've done. But before I go, I need to say this: you were always my home. Even when I lost myself, even when I betrayed that love, you were the only real thing I ever had. I know forgiveness is too much to ask. I just hope that someday, when you think of me, it's not with hate. I'm not asking you to come. I just wanted to say goodbye properly. Tom. The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. My hands trembled, and for a few minutes, I couldn't breathe. All the anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it came rushing back, but tangled this time with something new, sorrow. Not for the man who betrayed me, but for the man I once loved. I sat there for hours, staring at the letter, reading it over and over. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the past stay buried. But another part whispered, "You need closure, Laura." That night, I called Ethan. "Mom," he said, his voice sleepy but concerned. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. "I got a letter. From your father." There was a long pause. "What did he say?" I took a shaky breath. "He's sick. Dying, apparently." Ethan went quiet. I could hear the sound of his breathing through the phone. "Do you believe him?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But if it's true," he sighed deeply. "Do you want to see him?" The question cut deep. I didn't answer right away. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "But maybe I need to." There was silence on the other end, then his quiet voice, "If you go, I'll go with you." The next morning, we drove together 3 hours to a small coastal town where Tom had apparently been living. The whole drive, Ethan stared out the window, lost in his own storm of thoughts. I wanted to comfort him, but I barely knew how to comfort myself. When we arrived, the nurse at the care home led us down a quiet hallway. My heart pounded in my chest as we stopped at a door with his name on it. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. When we entered, I almost didn't recognize him. Tom looked frail, smaller somehow. His hair had gone completely gray, his skin pale and thin. He turned his head slowly, and when his eyes met mine, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Remorse. "Laura," he whispered, voice rasping. I stood frozen. Ethan took a step forward, his jaw tight, emotions flickering in his eyes. "Dad," he said quietly. Tom's lips trembled. "You came." Ethan swallowed hard. "Yeah. We did." For a long moment, none of us spoke. The air was thick with things that couldn't be undone. Finally, I sat down beside him. He looked at me weakly. "You didn't have to come." "I know," I said softly. "But I needed to." He closed his eyes briefly, tears slipping down his temples. "I'm sorry, Laura. Not just for what I did, but for every day I took you for granted. You were always better than I deserved." My throat tightened. I wanted to say something cruel, to remind him of the damage he caused, but all that came out was a whisper. "You hurt us deeply, Tom. But I don't hate you anymore." He looked at me, eyes shining. "That's more than I deserve." Ethan stepped closer, standing beside me. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" Tom smiled faintly. "Because I didn't want my son to pity me. I wanted you to remember me before I became this." Ethan's voice cracked. "You were my dad. I just wish you'd acted like it." Tom nodded slowly, tears falling freely. "I know. And I wish I had too." The room fell silent except for the faint sound of the ocean outside. We stayed for over an hour, talking, crying, sitting in that strange peace that only comes after all the storms have passed. When it was time to leave, Tom grabbed my hand weakly. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. "I can go in peace now." I squeezed his hand gently. "Goodbye, Tom." A few days later, I got the call. He was gone. And though my heart ached, it didn't break this time. Because in that final moment, we had found something close to forgiveness, and that was enough. That night, I stood by my window, watching the moonlight spill across the floor. I whispered to the quiet, "Goodbye, old life. Goodbye, old pain." And for the first time in years, I felt truly free.